We've all played video games before, or at least you probably have if you've clicked on this video. Some games are good, others not that good. What is the difference? Decisions. The same psychological drivers that affect our real lives affect the way that we enjoy video games. We feel good when we accomplish something and we feel bad when we lose. But part of that process of reward risk requires that our brain actually buys into what's going on as somewhat meaningful. What makes decisions in these games feel meaningful? Well, when we're talking about decisions in the real world, most economists refer to opportunity cost as the only real cost of an action. Using this quote from allocation.com, our wants are unlimited. The means to solve these wants are limited, but they are capable of alternative uses. Therefore, the problem of choice arises. This is the essence of economics. Given that economics is really no more than the study of how human beings choose to spend their time in order to get things they want, it's really no surprise that economic principles can be of use when talking about video games. And to that end, we've assembled a list of games that we think embody the principle of opportunity cost in order to better allow ourselves to visualize the difference between decisions that are meaningful and decisions that are not. Hopefully you find these as enlightening as we did. Project Gorgon is an absolutely amazing game. And not because of the lovely graphics on screen right now, it's actually because the game allows you to screw yourself over. Even from the very beginning of the game at character select, the race you choose causes NPCs to interact with you differently, and the changes aren't merely dialogue. However, the choices don't even begin to end there. For example, my favorite item in the game is pig transformation juice. That's right, you heard correctly. The game lets you turn into a pig. And it's not like WoW or most other modern MMOs where it's just a buff that wears off. Nope, it lasts forever. It's not just a cosmetic change either. Because you're a pig and no longer have hands, you can't use most of the combat trees in the game. Instead, you get a new skill, Pig, that you level up by playing as a pig. Furthermore, because you are now a pig, most humanoid NPCs assume you are an animal and can't talk, so they won't interact with you. And those that do usually try to run you out of town because they're so freaked out that you are a talking pig, although some are completely nonplussed. The game even has a completely separate social hub that you can only enter if you are transformed into an animal, with unique plot lines, quests, and rewards inside. Making this item even more unique is that this item can drop off of any pig regardless of level, meaning I got mine in the first zone of the game after Tutorial Island. What other MMO do you know of that lets new players make a completely game-altering decision within the first 5 hours of playing? The best part is that the importance of skill trainers isn't really obvious at this point in the game. So said player could play for dozens of hours before realizing they functionally soft-locked themselves out of large portions of the game. For example, one reputation crest requires the player to milk cows, an impossible task due to the lack of thumbs. Although the autopsy skill is still usable, so who knows. I should mention that there is an item that reverses a transformation, but it's a really rare drop, only really accessible at endgame, meaning that to do so, the player needs to basically beat the game as said pig before you earn the privilege of experiencing the several dozen other skills, or a lot of the plotline. As for me, I loved playing as a non-ruminant ungulate. 10 out of 10 would disregard warning text again. Path of Exile is another absolutely amazing game, and one of the reasons that so many people love it is the incredibly intricate skill system, item system, jewel system, all of these different systems of character customization that meaningfully change the way that your character plays. And one of the reasons that they're so meaningful is that every single opportunity cost in the game is really easily quantifiable. For example, the difference between the starting classes is an X number of skill points that it takes to get across the skill tree to where they start out. Other opportunity costs are really present throughout the game as well. You get ascension perks, you get a limited number of them. You only have a certain number of item slots. Your items often trade off with each other. You have gem sockets and the links between them. You only have a limited number of gem sockets. So the opportunity cost is really thrown in your face, as well as unique passive talents that have their very interesting opportunity costs as well. For example, there's a talent that vastly increases your damage by totems, but prevents your actual abilities from doing damage. Prevent you from missing, but prevent you from getting critically hit. This stuff is all over the game, and it makes playing it so interesting because every single character plays drastically different from each other. And that's not even getting into all of the secondary systems like corrupted items and unique items. So yeah, Path of Exile, really cool game. As a grand strategy game, Europa Universalis IV is really nothing more than a long series of decisions that aggregate to create a game. And EU4 really front-loads this decision-making. Most countries have different missions, different idea groups which provide passive modifiers as the game goes on, different government features, different religions, culture groups influence the countries that the country can turn into by forming. And when they tag switch into this new country, oftentimes they'll just gain a new passive idea group. But the choices don't end at the beginning of the game either. Every time that a country wishes to expand and conquers another country, you gain aggressive expansion, which you burn off over time, meaning that you have to choose which countries you want to conquer and which ones you don't want to conquer. Every couple of techs you level up. You get to pick a new idea group. You get a limited number of idea groups. And these idea groups are really powerful because they provide massive bonuses when you invest points into them. But this gets to perhaps the biggest form of opportunity cost in EU4, Monarch points. Monarch points can be converted into pretty much every resource into the game. Land through conquest, more production through development or culture conversion, religious stability. They can be converted into additional any bonus really because of ideas. So every single time you do anything, you have to weigh whether that usage of Monarch points is preferable to another one. And this is really the purest definition of opportunity cost, and it allows every single game that you play to go better and better because you're learning more about how the game plays, which is really satisfying. Furthermore, as the game goes along, most countries will be presented with series of decisions that they can take that last for the rest of the game. These decisions often have negatives. Oh, increase conversion rate, but also increase how expensive it is for me to gain stability. Oh, decrease papal relations, but increase prestige. And these decisions in aggregate start to have effects on the game. The addition of tons of AI or player opponents makes opportunity costs much more meaningful in the sense of time as well. Unlike the other games that we've mentioned on this list, you don't really get to do everything in EU4. You have a limited time span to play the game of 400 years, and the hundreds of other countries on the game map are all competing for the same resources and money and global influence that you are, which means that even if you say, oh, well, I'll just, conquer North Africa later, I'll go for the New World. Well, by the time that you manage to get your resources back from the New World to attack North Africa, you might find that the Spaniards or the Ottomans have already gotten there. So overall, it creates a really interesting and really fun play experience where every single game is different.
Heroes of the Storm is a self-described raucous online team brawler, but most people just call it a MOBA. What sets Heroes apart from the other games in the MOBA genre is how much the game relies on team play, as opposed to a solo game that just happens to be with a team. Instead of being forced to last-hit enemy minions in order to gain gold for yourself, the game wants you to work together with your team to collect experience which you can all use to upgrade your character at certain level intervals. Some characters such as Varian have talents that will completely shift their playstyle for the duration of the match. At level 4, Varian chooses if he wants to tank for his team with Taunt, do burst damage with Colossus Smash, or sustain damage with Twin Blades of Fury, which we lovingly call Wind Blades. Each of these talents have varying focus on one thing for the rest of the match, and which one you choose can make or break the game for your team. Most other heroes get this choice at level 10, like Sonya or Arthas. At level 10, Sonya must choose between a long-range stun for hard engaging and running away, or a buff that increases her base damage by 150% whenever it is used. This choice between more damage or more range have the potential to change her playstyle significantly. What makes these choices significant is that choosing one completely gets rid of the option of getting the other one later. If you realize that you really needed that leap to get out of danger, there's no way for you to go back on your choice. This makes most talents feel very meaningful, because there's no take-backs until you get into a different game. Meaningful choices don't have to last forever, but they have to represent an opportunity cost to the player in that certain situation, even if you can just re-choose something else in your next game. World of Warcraft fails in allowing you to make meaningful decisions because of the game's core design. From patch to patch, Blizzard will change the way that certain abilities work in order to keep the game balanced. Players will always gravitate towards what spec is considered the best at any given time, and Blizzard knows this, so they have to keep the opportunity cost of switching between specs low. Allowing players to switch between specs basically at will is a big part of the game at this point, but it didn't work like this until their 4th expansion, Mists of Pandaria. Before then, changing between specs cost in-game gold, and the price to switch would increase every time you wanted to within a certain period. This change from costing the player money to costing the player nothing essentially did away with opportunity cost, other than the time it took to re-gear for a new spec. The game had to change with the player base, and the players had moved on from just doing whatever they wanted and towards doing what others said was the best from patch to patch. Shadowlands seeks to fix this issue with the introduction of covenants, but players are fearful with this change for a few reasons. The way covenants will work is that each covenant will give you access to an ability, and each week you will be able to get a certain amount of points that you can put towards making this ability more powerful. The problem is, you only get access to one covenant, and switching between them will make you lose all your progress. And WoW these days, the competition of the game for most players no longer comes from beating all the content. The competition comes from getting into a group. If you want to grind out your mythic content for the week, you need to find yourself a good group. And to find a good group, you have to show that choosing you over someone else will help the group finish their weekly content faster. With the introduction of the covenant system, players are worried that one covenant will outshine the rest, and by choosing a different covenant, they'll be putting themselves at a competitive disadvantage. Thus, the opportunity cost is not having to play the game more, but not getting to play the game at all. Shadowlands is still a long time away, but as far as it works now, the covenant system will either add more meaningful choice to the game, or just give the players the illusion of choice until the numbers are all out there. At the end of all this, one thing is clear. Any choice we make is only as meaningful as what we miss out on for making those choices. The most valuable thing that we as humans have is time. Time to spend with our families, time to spend working, or time to spend playing video games. No matter what we choose to do at that time, there will always be an opportunity cost associated with it. Choices within video games are no different. So what really makes a video game choice meaningful? The same thing that makes any choice meaningful, and that is the capacity to which you can ask yourself if you would have had more fun choosing to do something